I'm Steve Brule with Studio Brule, and I'm here with the Liberty Bells, 4 ladies from London, England, who are commenting on social issues, cultural commentary. And we're going to start off today with a discussion about the recent election. And Natoya, you had an interesting story to lead with on a false article about Philip Davies. Can you tell us about that?
Okay, so on Thursday, me and Elizabeth stayed up from, when the polls closed at 10 p.m. until, say, for the whole night. I didn't go to sleep until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And about 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. maybe, I was on Twitter with the Lady Philip Davies handle, which you can see here. And suddenly someone said that, and for about 2 hours, Twitter just went mental. Huffington Post jumped on it. They wrote an article, and the article was like a BuzzFeed style article where they were just kind of listing what people have said on Twitter about it. BuzzFeed actually did an article as well. And it was just like GIF after GIF of people like celebrating, dancing on his grave, talking about how they all hate him, how it's a wonderful day, best thing at the election. And then I just basically said in a tweet, I'm waiting for the official result because I don't believe it. I didn't say I don't believe it, but I said I'm just waiting for the official result because that sounded pretty dodgy to me. And then say maybe like 5 a.m. It was released on the BBC website, that they kind of have the official page for each constituency, and it has a graph of what percentage of the vote people get. And Philip Davies had won, and he got a 5,000 majority, and he actually increased his vote share from last time. So when you have a look on like a Wikipedia or any of the stats pages that have stats on the internet, in the last election he got about 50% of the vote. This time he got 51.4. So even though Labour got more votes this time around, Philip actually increased his share of the vote. It was a bit of a roller coaster of emotions for a few hours there, Steve. Philip won. And then I promptly decided to make a really badly concocted meme because I don't have Photoshop, and it was 6 a.m. and I couldn't even be bothered to try and make it look nice. But all I received after that was silence. No one said anything.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that story. I was actually shocked, and I believe that Philip Davies had lost at that time.
And what it reminded me of as well was kind of the hit piece that Hope Not Hate wrote about us. What a nuisance it was, but their reaction to it was just such vitriolic. And not just it was based on lies. It was a load of trash. Everything they were saying was based on like unresearched, kind of wrong, unnuanced information, and it's just this and how nasty and how violent it was, like people wishing that someone would shoot him, and it's just that is how they respond. And the whole campaign, the whole Sophie Walker standing against him, Shipley, the attack on us, it was for one purpose only, and it was to make it unacceptable for views that he expresses to be expressed in Parliament. They want those views out of Parliament. That is why they've come down on him that way.
Oh yeah,
and all of those details are in. Steve, I've put a link to our official rebuttal to Hope Not Hate in the group chat there. If you can put it in the comment section on the stream, thanks.
Okay, I'll put that in there right now.
For the record, the Women's Equality Party got a grand total of 1.9% of the vote,
which was less than the monster raving loony party, wasn't it?
Yeah, they got less votes in the country than the Monster Raving Loony Party. And also, the Loony Party had 12 seats they were contesting, and the Women's Equality Party only contested 7.
And then I tweeted that, and I screenshotted, and it had Monster Raving Loonies, and underneath it Women's Equality Party, and I forgot to screenshot the one underneath, which was funny, and it was the Pirate Party, and they only got a marginally fewer amount of votes. But somebody from the Pirate Party messaged me, and he said, the Women's Equality Party actually had, it was something like 71 grand was their total donations, which is a lot of money to kind of piss away on like nothing.
And how much media coverage?
And how much
well, unprecedented.
How much media coverage have they had? And then they only marginally did better than the Pirate Party.
Yeah, well, I mean, I must say, it's been a real victory against mainstream media as well. Philip Davies holding his seat, because all of mainstream media have been out with their knives, and the good people of Shipley have completely ignored it, which is just fantastic.
Yeah.
And the other good news, have we done with Philip Davies?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the last point I had about that was that even Steve Tapcott, who, as I said, when I went to the hustings, if you were going to compare just a politician against politician, so Steve against Sophie Walker is a better politician in the way she presents herself, in my opinion. Even he increased his vote share, and he got more votes this time around from the last election when he was up against Philip then. So as Philip correctly said to me when I saw him at the hustings, he said that Sophie Walker will split the vote, and it'll end up him getting more of a share of it, and that's exactly what happened. So well done, Sophie.
Mm-hmm.
Terrific.
1.9%.
Yeah. Well, it's encouraging that there are some serious contenders like the Pirate Party and the Raving Lunatics over there to bring some sanity to your politics.
Well,
now,
we also had in Maidenhead, which is Theresa May's constituency, where I think they had a Monster Raving Loony Party candidate, but they also had Elmo from Sesame Street, who is in actual fact a guy called Bobby Smith, who is a father's rights campaigner. So he's basically been there to spread the word about fathers' rights and what's going on in our courts. So much love to him.
I mean, politics is theater, and what better than Elmo to help raise the bar. You had some other issues, something to do with the Democratic Unionist Party going on during the election there, or after the election. Can someone enlighten us on the situation there?
So the Conservative Party did get more votes than any other party, but to have a majority when they vote on issues in Parliament, I think they need something like 10 or something more seats than they have.
They need, they need to have 326 seats, because that's like one more than half of the entire House.
And the only people that are going to help them potentially form a coalition with them are the DUP, which are the Irish Unionist Party, and they're kind of in talks about it now, and there are lots of issues kind of in terms of, because obviously the DUP have to represent their own constituents and the people, their voter base, so it would have implications for certain things that can be negotiated within Brexit, but what's more relevant to us is the main thing, that's the main story that's being really used to paint them as completely and utterly evil by the left, is their stance on gay marriage and their stance on abortion, which is an extremist hardline stance. They don't think any abortion should be legal at all. But the way that the left are reacting to it is just, they're saying, that it invalidates the government and all this kind of stuff, and Jeremy Corbyn needs to become Prime Minister straight away, because how could these people have any power? And I think it all goes to show the power actually that women do have, and the value that is set on women's rights, and how much of a weapon that can actually be.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no question of them kind of shouldering in any of those beliefs to England, Scotland and Wales. Ruth Davidson, who is the leader of the Scottish Tory party, who did really well, is actually a lesbian, and she got a personal sort of guarantee that they're not going to try to roll back any kind of LGBTQ rights in the rest of the UK. But at the end of the day, I mean, they are representing their constituents, and Ireland is a very country, and they're the values that they have over there.
Yeah, I don't think that the DUP would even consider trying to bring the abortion issue and the gay rights and marriage issue to the table for negotiating. I mean, you know, this is the only time they're ever going to get a look in. Why would they do that?
Bringing are the fisheries. They won't want any compromise on the fisheries, and they will want a soft border between the Republic Party and Northern Ireland, which again are big kind of negotiating factor for Brexit. But I think the other hypocrisy of it is that, you know, what about Corbyn's sympathies for the IRA, all this kind of stuff? No, nobody's supposed to talk about that. That doesn't make him a terrorist, but it does make Theresa May a misogynist for wanting to get into bed with the DUP. So again, hypocrisy. Would we expect anything less?
Well, let's not forget that it's come out as well yesterday that was it the last election or the election before that? Which one was it? Was it the last election or the one before that? Labour. No,
was it Ed Miliband, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ed Miliband. He tried to form a coalition with the DUP then, and they rejected him. So we have to put that into perspective. And I also read, but I don't think this is true, so maybe Catherine or someone can correct me, that they want to throw Nigel Farage's hat into the ring as someone who should be dealing with Brexit.
As a negotiator.
Which would
be fantastic.
Just for the trolling aspect alone.
Paula, you look like you have something to say there.
Oh, I was just going to say the DUP do oppose abortion, but I was just a clarification. I think and they do allow it in the most extreme cases. But I agree with the other girls. They're not going to take up, you know, that issue at all. Or, you know, and like I said, Ruth Davidson's been given all kinds of assurances. They're not going to roll back on those kinds of fundamental rights in the UK.
Okay.
There's nothing to worry about.
Just as an aside, Paula, there's a strong banging coming from your side there. You're not speaking when you're not speaking. Just if you could mute on there, and then just unmute when you're ready to speak.
Yeah. Okay. I'm getting a stair carpet put in. Sorry.
Okay.
The other good news from the election is that Suella Fernandez, who is the author of the Family Justice Bill, which is a big kind of father's rights bill, has been re-elected. So hopefully she's going to resuscitate that, and hopefully it'll go through. We'll be watching.
Terrific.
Unfortunately for me, my old MP, my old Conservative MP, was actually a signatory on that bill, and my new MP is a Labour MP who's a steadfast Remainer. He wants to soften up our hard Brexit, and he's also a total cuck. So I've been on his Twitter feed seeing all these photos of him with standing behind white ribbon banners, like, and you know, against violence against women. And I've just been tweeting him like, what about male victims? What about male victims? I've also contacted him on Facebook, where we've spoke before, and I've emailed him twice now, and he's completely ignoring me, but I guess he's busy. I'll get to see him.
Maybe we could.
Speaking of cooks.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, speaking of cooks, can I change the subject?
Yeah, sure.
I was just somebody posted a video on my feed about there's a woman in England called Liz Jones, who's a notorious kind of narcissist, and she's for about a decade she's been writing stories about herself and really kind of self eviscerating. It's really painful to watch her and to listen to her, because she's obviously quite a disturbed woman. And the latest thing she's done is to get attention is go on a kind of magazine program and say that she tried to steal two of her ex-husband's sperm to kind of secretly impregnate herself. And this is on the internet. I put the link in the group chat there. And on it, as I was obviously, I mean, I didn't judge this for anything else other than the fact that Liz Jones is an idiot. She's not representative of women at all. But in the comments, lots of men going their own way joined the conversation, and I've noticed a lot of people on the internet are confused about what between MRIs and men going their own way. Now, I find just looking at the evidence of what's out there on the internet, men going their own way are decidedly more bitter and angry and ideologically kind of focused against women as a sex, not just feminists, but women particularly, in the same way that feminists are focused against men as a sex, as an ideology. Whereas men's rights activists, are just looking at the imbalance of rights in the family courts and things like that. Now, is that a fair assessment, or what's good? Because the stuff that I was reading in the Liz Jones thing about Western slags, and I think Karen Strawn kind of was there in the conversation as well, and she was kind of pouring oil on the fire, and it just wasn't nice. And I think that kind of element of the kind of red pill movement, if you want, is kind of poisonous, and it will poison the men's rights cause. That's my opinion. It's probably controversial.
I've seen as well some anger in the MGTOW movement, but I wouldn't say that anger defines the movement in that way, or resentment of. There's certainly a lot of resentment of men's how men's role within male-female relationships has evolved in the legal sense for men. I think a big part of it is the risks of that men face when involved in intimate relationships with a woman today. But yeah, there is anger out there for sure. But you're talking three distinct ideas here: the red pill idea, which encompasses people who are MRAs and not MRAs right across the spectrum, MGTOWs, who are people who believe it's best to not have anything to do with women, and MRAs, which are men's rights advocates, as the official term is, which nominally is about rights and lack of them in society. But I think it's fair to say that there is a pretty strong vein of anger in some of the MGTOW movement. I would add that rightfully so, I think.
I think, a lot of feminists who came to feminism because of having a bad experience with a man, almost that bad experience and that anger validates their feminism, and it gives them sort of a status to stand there and speak and say what they say. So I think it is a double standard that when men feel that same impetus, it kind of invalidates them. However, I mean, obviously that doesn't necessarily mean to say that they're being helpful or, making things any better. But I think, was it Karen Strawn that made this point? A lot of, people that self-define as MGTOW is one thing, but the phenomenon of MGTOW, so a lot of men who are just kind of going their own way wouldn't even have heard of the phrase MGTOW. They just thought, this isn't for me. I'm really disadvantaged in this contract, in this kind of, agreement. I'm just going to step back from that. And I wonder if you could use the phrase to just refer to men that have just had enough and they don't feel that there's any benefit for them in the system.
Well, I think that's fair enough. People who've had bad experiences can judge, can make their own individual. I think it invalidates feminists when they kind of generalize from their own personal experience to the whole of the sex. So I think, and in the same way, it invalidates kind of men who then do the same thing. I think that it's exactly the same perspective, and that's what's wrong with it. They're both using exactly the same kind of philosophy and ideology.
I'd just like to add in there. There is a little bit of a difference in that in my lifetime I've seen a steady change in laws that target men unfairly, and specifically men who are involved in intimate relationships. And those laws evolve around what happens when there's a conflict in a relationship. Well, in Canada, in some jurisdictions, a man loses virtually everything. Absolutely. So this is I think, a valid reason to be angry.
Well, I think there is a valid reason for those individuals to be angry. I think people who haven't gone through that experience, like women who haven't gone through it and inculcated into feminism when they're young because they haven't even had any relationships. I think the kind of the jump between an individual experience to creating an ideology which completely separates kind of one sex and demonizes them.
I don't think that MGTOWs have an ideology in the same way that feminists do at all. It's not. They're not comparable. I
think some do.
So I consume a lot of MGTOW content. Actually, I'm quite interested in them, more so than I think some of you are. Mia, please don't start crying right now. I think that what I've noticed is Paul Elam did a very, very good video where he identified the different groups within MGTOW. Think of it like you've got the kind of radical feminists and the kind of more mainstream feminists. But even then, I don't think that comparison is exactly the same. He describes MGTOWs, and then within MGTOWs, you've got the pigtails, and the pigtails are the guys who genuinely become misogynistic as a result of a bad experience, or they've always been that way and they've just found something to identify it with. And then what he kind of describes is that guys tend to have a bad experience. They identify themselves with MGTOW because it helps them, and and a lot of the guys that are talking in an angry way are trying to process a lot of anger and negativity about what they've been through, and they literally don't have anywhere to turn in the same way that women do at all, because no one takes their pain seriously. And this process is called red pill rage. I don't know if you've heard of that term. You must have. So I've actually spoken to quite a few MGTOWs that I'm friends with on Facebook and such now, and all of them said they went through what's described as red pill rage, and most of them have come out of it. Because if they hadn't come out of it, then they wouldn't be friends with me. So it's really It's really disappointing that people are going to get this view online, and all they're going to see is lots of.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up, because
I think
we can
have
this kind of
within this are going through like a kind of collective red pill rage, and I don't think it's going to be the same in say 2 to 5 years, or it might get worse, but it's not going to be like that forever. Sorry, I just wanted to finish my point, and I know that Mia is making noise and she's trying to pull my boobs out, so I'm going to shut up now.
No, cool. Yeah, absolutely. But that's why I'm bringing it up, because there's a confusion, and I've noticed. I found this male feminist thread on Twitter yesterday, and it's full of articles, which demonize men's rights, and they're using the worst examples from MGTOW, from what you get off the internet, to do that with. So it's kind of a bit like there needs to be it needs to be talked about within the community about that there is that if there needs to be a kind of a maintenance of the brand, if you like, so that it doesn't get taken over, like moderate feminism or just people who kind of care about women's rights but don't necessarily want to exclude men and confuse themselves as feminists rather than egalitarians. Just that. Well, we'll see what happens on this comment section anyway underneath, because that'll be interesting.
I think the MGTOW thing is fascinating as well, and I think it's worth maybe some whole shows on discussing the MGTOW movement. I mean, there's obviously some huge differences. Feminism swept into power in our society almost as if it had jets propelling it forward. Within a decade, it was in every university. It was dominating universities, had implemented legal changes throughout North America in terms of affirmative action. And the list goes on and on and on. It was almost like feminists didn't really have to do anything. They just said, we want control, and it just poof, there it is. The MGTOW are never going to get that kind of power. They will be shamed, ridiculed, marginalized forever because we are gynocentric. Until we start to force our society to look at male-female relationships as actual relationship of equals, I think you're going to see a MGTOW movement, just like we've always seen a sort of lifelong bachelors.
What do you mean? What do you mean equals?
Well, for instance, in Canada, I'll speak in Canada because you know, that's where I know the most. If there's any conflict in a relationship here, the woman is going to get everything. She's going to get the kids. She's going to get the house. She's going to get the paycheck. She's going to have a claim on the pension, and the guys are going to get nothing. Now, that doesn't just play in the power of a breakdown of relationship. That plays throughout the relationship. Countless women do use passive-aggressive or veiled threats within a continuing relationship for the life of the relationship, knowing that the man stands to lose everything if he doesn't make her happy. There's nothing equal about it.
I think what went, the problem with that is what the feminist slogan, the personal is political, and they were allowed to bring the government into intimate dyads and intimate relationships. Now, rather than men trying to step in and saying, yes, the personal is just as political for us, I think the question is to get the government and get legislation out of intimate relationships and get people, to take responsibility for if people are going to have children and they're going to divorce, which happens, they need to come to terms about how they're going to go ahead in the future and maintain support for the offspring that they have. The government shouldn't have to intervene in that at all. That's my.
I'd like to add one more into that, then I'm going to leave the floor open to you guys. That's interesting. The whole presumption of equal parenting question has been here, and it's been on the plate here in North America for a long time, as long as I can remember. And who is against the presumption of equal parenting? Feminists, who are entrenched in every institution of power in our culture here and are funded by the tax dollars largely paid by the very men who will not get to see their kids because of those feminist organizations. They are absolutely opposed to the presumption of equal parenting in the event of divorce or separation. So yeah, MGTOW, I mean, I do get uncomfortable seeing some of the bursts of anger against that sometimes spill over into a generalized anger of women. There is against women in there. There is that element, but at the same time, I think there's strong, not just personal experience reasons for that anger, but the pure recognition that men who actually want to have that level of intimate life with a woman feel that it is so stacked against them that they're angry at the very system itself, not just at women, and it spills over. The whole thing kind of spills around quite a bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll pass the floor.
My opinion is just that obviously, feminists do some appalling stuff, and that is why we're all here on this live stream, and they have a lot of influence and a lot of power. But remember, most people do not identify as feminists. Most women don't identify as feminists, and in their own way, in the way that the MGTOWs as well, they want to in some way deconstruct the family. That is never going to happen because human beings, men and women, love each other. And they have babies together and they make families together. And that is what humans do. And neither feminists nor MGTOWs are going to change that. Feminists can cause a lot of problems for a lot of people. But
yeah, I think, Jordan Peterson's kind of advice is kind of more pragmatic in that, just find somebody who you're compatible with, you trust is going to be on the. You can't guarantee that you're going to be happy. Life is suffering. It's about what you do or the meaning you give to that suffering. You're going to go through. Life's going to throw all kinds of things at you. Feminists want kind of to be free of kind of all kinds of selection pressures. That's not going to happen. Like Catherine says, we're a sexually reproducing species. Men and women actually like each other more than they dislike each other. And we have to concentrate on that kind of solution rather than the separation of that.
And I've had numerous fallings out on my group and Facebook, Women Fighting Feminism, with some MGTOWs who basically are a little bit paranoid because of this group. Go on about how one guy was causing some problems. I was talking to him in the messenger, and he was saying to me that I would treat women better than I would him. And I was saying to him, you obviously don't know me, because I've always been someone who hates bullshit when I see bullshit, and I don't really care where the bullshit comes from. He simply refused to even consider that I could even be close, that I could be like that. So even me, I'm someone who has openly shown my support for the concept of MGTOW, because I actually think that if society is to ever go more libertarian, then this kind of thinking that you should live as far removed from the system as possible, I think they can mesh well together in some kind of way. But even though I have shown support, I've still received abuse from and distrust from some of these guys, it's really sad. You know, really sad.
Yeah, I should say the same to women who are that bitter as well. You know, maybe you shouldn't be getting into politics. You should be in therapy until you've kind of gotten through it, and then have something kind of constructive to kind of add to the discussion. And constructive in the way it might be a criticism, but it has to be constructive rather than just, we understand your anger, but you know, there's a difference between political kind of activism and just you know, when you're struggling, when you're in help, when you're in pain. You know, any politics or ideology that weaponizes that pain rather than tries to alleviate it, it has to. I don't trust that at all.
Speaking of politicians needing therapy, Jess Phillips was reelected, and what does that say about her electorate riding or community there? I don't know the term you have, but there are people who. Most people in her area agree with her hate view of men.
Yeah, it is disappointing. We can't get away from it. I mean, someone on Twitter said how disgusting it is that people in Shipley would vote in Philip Davies. Well, I then had to say, well, you know what? People voted in Jess Phillips, and so it's their choice, and they have to live with their choice, even though we had Swain and Jordan, who are MRAs, who went up there to educate people and give them leaflets and just point out just how man-hating Jess Phillips is. Sadly, it just seems to be the case that they don't care. I think that, how can I say this without sounding like a snob about people in Yardley? I don't think that Yardley has the most informed electorate. That's a good way. That's the politest way I'm going to put it.
You may have a future in politics.
Yardley has been a Labour safe seat for an awfully long time, which I think is why she was put in there, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I think it says less about Jess Phillips and more about them just voting Labour, possibly.
Yeah, I think so. Unfortunately, who's promising more benefits and welfare and freebies? Labour are, and I suspect that people in Yardley overall are probably attracted to that rather than the ideological aspect of feminism or progressivism there. And I spoke to a few residents. Most of them really don't like progressivism. Like when I was asking them, they were all rejecting of people that read The Guardian and that sort of thing. but they probably are quite marginalised.
There's a topic that's on, I find interesting now that we're also talking about psychotherapy and the need for it, switching over to universities, banning the word genius at Cambridge. I mean, really, is any woman really feel uncomfortable around using the word genius?
Can I just talk about this? Because I did do both my undergraduate and my postgraduate at Cambridge University in a department that is a similar department. I mean, I think is it the history department? I don't know. It's some kind of artsy department. And all I can say is, so that women actually do dominate in those subjects. There are so many women professors. There are so many women in the postgraduate departments. It's just ridiculous. It's just, and they say that women can't see themselves in that genius role.
Oh, but they're not geniuses.
It's crazy. It's just crazy. And
since we're banning words, maybe we should, instead of referring to Cambridge as a university, we could make people more comfortable referring to it as a prep school. Does that make people more comfortable?
But I don't know. I mean, how many times are people going to use the phrase genius anyway? Like, I don't know, when you're studying academically, it's actually very rare for your lecturers to stand there and say, you should read so-and-so's book, he's a genius, or this politician was a genius. I don't know, it's very rare for that phrase to come up. I don't know, on that,
Yeah.
on
I think they're probably basing it on the fact that there are more male geniuses than women, but they're forgetting, you know, because we're talking about the tail ends of the bell curve, there are also more kind of idiots and psychopaths, and at the opposite end of the bell curve. That's just the way it is, and women are kind of clustered towards the mean. So yeah, obviously that's sexist.
And of course at Oxford University this week as well, we've had the history faculty changing one of the exams to a take-home paper because men do better in exams than women, and they want to level out that disparity. What about the disparity of fewer men going to university and getting degrees, and particularly in history departments doing postgraduate work? And if women are better at coursework as opposed to exams, surely that gives them a huge advantage in postgraduate studies. These people, they've got absolute blinkers on, and they just, it's like one of Aesop's fables. I don't know which one. Not being able to see the
This is part of the whole gynocentric preference in our culture in general.
I welcome them doing these things, because the sooner they get outed to the public for being basically not as good as everyone thinks they are, the better. And the sooner people stop paying £9,000 a year or more to go there, thinking they're getting a world-class education, the better. So I actually look at this and think, oh, this is terrible. But at the same time, I'm thinking good, because they don't deserve the highest level of intellectual students at all. They don't deserve it. So they're getting what they deserve, in my opinion.
What there's something I wrote in I wrote a tiny little review of Wonder Woman. Do you remember? A couple of days ago. But it's just about gynocentrism. I think, you know, there are reasons why society is gynocentric, and it's not always. I think feminists are turning it into a kind of toxic kind of expression. But the reason is that you know, feminists seem to, and I'll just try and read it. Where is it?
Can I just butt in quickly and say I've got to go to school, so I will see you all later. See you next week.
All
Steve.
right. Okay.
See ya.
Bye bye.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. I said globally, men are overwhelmingly represented as victims of violence, as they are in dangerous jobs, defense and policing. And everywhere you look, there are more. Everywhere you see risk, you see men, and that's an evolutionary injunction, not a cultural one. But feminists seem to want to kind of remove, you know, the cultural injunction of women's roles in society, which is actually about being carers. It doesn't mean that they only have to be carers and mothers, but it is actually that's the kind of cultural injunction. But feminists seem to want to remove that completely, while insisting that men maintain their role as defenders, as people who will throw themselves in front of the bus for women, or go down with the ship for women and children, whilst they are trying to say, well, you know, there's no cost for that, there's no trade-off for that. Well, that's impossible, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, good point. Feminists have taken one side, want to take one side of the balance right out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably is one of the impetuses towards MGTOW. It's pushing men to say, hey, yeah, I feel that I want to play my role in a relationship with a woman, but the woman doesn't want the risks for me, and then the impetus on women is to not have to fill their role. So I'm out of here.
Well, I have another thought on MGTOW. I also think that MGTOW is, I don't know what Paula, she's just left her chair. Oh, damn. I actually think MGTOW is an evolutionary strategy as well, because a mating strategy, because I think that guys who describe themselves as MGTOW and then
Catherine's got to go. I'm just going to insert in here for a second. Yeah, do you want to say something before you go there, Catherine?
No, I just love you all.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Oh, it's just me, you and me, Steve. Oh, where's Paula? There she is. I actually think, Paula, that we just mentioned MGTOW again. I actually think that, I don't know what you think about this because you've studied it in depth. I actually think that MGTOW is like a new, not a new, but is an emerging like strategy for men to gain back a kind of masculinity that they've lost, and therefore it makes them more attractive to women and to the opposite sex than guys who say describe themselves as MRAs, because MGTOWs are saying, you know, they are confidently asserting, you know, I'm not going to be part of the system and I'm going to go my own way, and that instantly makes them more mysterious. So that makes them more attractive in that way. And then two, they kind of have the guts to do it and the guts to stand out. And if they do get past the kind of anger stage, the red pill rage stage, and they you know, and they are kind of well-rounded again in the way they express themselves and just get on with what it is they want to do in their life, that is extremely attractive to any woman, whether she's a feminist or not. Now, in my opinion, I think that it's actually them reclaiming it again. If they are the type of MGTOW that would be attracted to women anyway, and not ones that would have been that kind of percentage of society that would have never mated, even when things were much better between the sexes. Yeah. So I actually think of it like that, because I've got a few MGTOW friends, and I would say they could, if they wanted to, they could all get a relationship with a fairly attractive woman quite easily. So
well, I could be wrong in this, but I think a lot of MGTOWs do have relationships with women, but not in a sort of, but in a kind of a restrained way. Is that not right?
Yeah.
I think it's a risky strategy, depending on, because I think you know, the way the kind of the quality of your relationships often comes down, you know, the kind of personality traits that you've got, you know, like and how you kind of manage your life. If you can manage your life well, you can usually manage relationships well, and that they all kind of bleed into each other. So
yeah,
you know, it's kind of, it can be, maybe that's why lots of women are becoming Islamic, because they like the kind of strict kind of differentiation of the sexes within Islam, is you know, the Islamic faith. Or I don't know, men like, you know, I don't know, studies of the UK and the West, you know, seem to say that, you know, men and women like the same things. They like egalitarian values. They value the two most things that they value most are their families and their relationships. That's men and women. That's not kind of so they have the same. Most men and women have the same goals. They want the same things.
I don't think they have the same response to stress. That, and I think that's where the difference. So women are, as you know, like they're extremely insecure about their security and stability. So
and especially after they have a baby, my God, that goes through the roof.
Yeah,
neuroticism goes through the roof. That's part of what makes them good mothers, though, when they're that neurotic, when they have a helpless child and they're awake every 5 minutes during the night, kind of checking that they're breathing and stuff like that. That's part of, you know.
Compare. There was a question or comment in the comments here. Men going their own way right now, largely in our society, these men are ridiculed and shamed, I think, as rather than supported. Certainly outside of any kind of MRA group, and even within the MRAs, there's a lot of people who ridicule and shame the MGTOWs. And
because we're confused, we don't know really what they are.
Well, that's not quite the point that I was getting to. The other side of this is that we look in our culture today, and a woman who decides not to have children and to focus on her career is therefore then a powerful woman today.
I don't think so. I
say that they're
that's the narrative that feminists want.
That's the narrative that feminists are pushing. Yeah.
But women have always gained status in every society, across time, across everything. A woman becomes a woman when she has a child, when she becomes a mother. Right. That's why feminists want to take that again. They want to change the rules. They want to change the basic rules on which our species, you know, is based upon. And you know, women don't like being managed by other women at work, even as well, and especially women who don't have kids and who kind of like lord over them like they have status. You know, these kind of childless women, and they're thinking, who the hell are you? Who are you talking to? Who do you think you're talking to?
So there's an element of intrasexual competition from childless women versus resenting the power that women with children have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the this thing where women without children are supposed to be celebrated now. I think there's only a small selection of the population that are buying into that. It may be presented that way, but in my experience, those women, it's like other women won't necessarily say to them, yes, I don't, you know, I not feel threatened by you, but I feel I don't think I can relate to you anymore, or I think it's a bit weird that you want to do that. They won't necessarily say it outright, but they will. Their actions will portray that. That's my experience. I just don't think. I think it's when a mother manages to have a career and a good husband and children. That is like the golden, you know, the golden goose.
But even then, there has to be and as you know, feminists are trying to say this pay gap, you know, is unacceptable. No, actually, it's not unacceptable. It's actually a really good trade-off. We as mothers trade off, you know, that pay gap, negligible as it is, you know, over a lifetime of aggregated earnings. We trade that off to spend quality time with our children when they need us, and to spend quality time with our partners who support us. The family should not be a battleground. The personal is not political, you know, unless there are some kind of laws being broken. Other than that, people have the right to self-determine their personal relationships.
The significant thing about, and it's true that it's a small number of women who do want to promote the sort of childless life as powerful and empowering and all that. It's a small number, but these are a very powerful group. It's feminists that are promoting that, and they are entrenched, as we know, in every power structure of our society. And they're the most influential group as a single group, I think, in every powerful structure of our society.
I'd ask people to kind of look up a woman called by the name of Ariel Levy. She wrote a book about 10 years ago called Female Chauvinist Pigs, where she was derided. Absolute classic example of female intersexual competition. She was denigrating kind of young women using their sexual power to get mates, to get just to get a life, right? To do what they, and to celebrate it as well. Right? She called the book was called Female Chauvinist Pigs. That's what she thought of young women. And there's an op-ed recently came out with her basically saying that she regretted not having children when she was young, when she was fertile. She regretted listening to the kind of feminist indoctrination that she'd just been inculcated with. That she was lonely, she was childless, she'd had a horrific abortion, and there are many stories. These are the women that are cast on the sideline by feminism. They are the feminist cannon fodder. They're used up and chewed up in the prime of their lives to pretend they think, my God, I'm so I can freeze my eggs, I can become pregnant later on, and they find out actually it's not that easy. When you hit 35 and you haven't got kids, and you're looking at the future, you're not married, you don't have a partner, you don't have any kids, all you have is a job and a bitchy sub-editor or editor that's just down your neck all of the time, and that's what it is going to be like for the rest of your life.
I have three female friends who didn't have children, and two of them tried with the fertility treatments, and it was a long and painful and very, very emotionally draining process that did not work. And
for women who don't have kids,
they both ended up adopting kids, but this has become for all of them a major source of pain in their lives. So why is it that otherwise healthy women will forego what is, by all any definition, the most rewarding, the most life-affirming, the most satisfying and potentially life-satisfying experience that they will ever have a chance to have?
Because they're fed a lie. That's it, basically. They are ideological cannon fodder. And they don't know.
But they have to make a choice too. I mean, we're fed lies every day. Every day I'm fed lies from morning to night in the media.
Men can make a choice, right? Women are on a time limit. They can go through their 20s and up there, and after they leave school 15 years and think, all right, I'm 35 now, that their time is almost up. Right, men can go. I know it's not. They can still flip that. They can still change that. And of course, due to hypergamy, they're more likely. Older men are far more likely to find younger women and to their families than older women are more likely to find men of the same age, of men who are making men who've got jobs, and also want families who are going to choose them above kind of younger, more fertile, more beautiful women. This is the trap that feminists are putting women in. But and maybe they didn't even realize they were doing it. Maybe it's an unforeseen circumstance. Well, it's not unforeseen now because we can see it. It's documented. And so this is all. Sorry, go on.
No, I also think that we because the West was so successful, we became extremely materialistic and privileged. And so people started to see all these new developments through capitalism. The standard of life was so great. Everyone's having these new experiences. They're going traveling. They're doing this. We've got all this technology. And so life just seemed like it's always going to be great. The children might just could get in the way of that.
Yeah. I think as humans, we all want to leave legacies. Now, for most of us who are not geniuses, that word that's been banned in Oxford, for most of us who are not geniuses, the only way we can leave a lasting legacy is via children.
Yeah.
And I think, again, Jordan Peterson says, don't go down the route of not having children unless you know that you are extraordinary. Someone like Steven Pinker, who's, made a conscious decision, him and his wife said, he's an evolutionist, and he said, my genes can go jump in the lake. He's decided to leave a legacy That's not a genetic legacy, that it's a literary legacy, that's an intellectual legacy. And he can do that because he is a genius. Most of us can't do that. Most of the women working for peanuts, you know, for Jezebel, or, you know, doing op-eds for the HuffPo feminism, are not going to leave any kind of literary legacy whatsoever. The only chance they have to leave a legacy is like the rest of us.
We're coming up on an hour here, ladies. So maybe if you have some last points to make, we should wind this down. Any last points?
I was going to make a comment about
What'd you say?
I was going to make a comment about Wonder Woman.
Oh yeah.
The thing is, maybe we should do another hangout about Wonder Woman alone, or at least bring it up again. I mean, the only problem is we have to warn everyone that there'll be spoilers. So if you're interested in listening to what we think about Wonder Woman,
yeah, let us know in the comments.
Haven't seen it, just let us. You know, just skip the hangout, maybe next week's hangout, and then come back to us afterwards, because I really want to talk about it. I'm really happy that Philip Davies won again, and I'd like us. We are probably going to continue to develop that campaign. Every week I try and make sure Mia's asleep during this thing, but she never is. She obviously subconsciously knows that she wants to get in the way of me doing this. So
milk.
Try.
Okay. Paula, did you have another comment to leave us with?
No, I've been verbose enough.
Okay. Well, thanks again for a wonderful hangout, ladies, and thanks viewers for tuning in. Again, next week with the Liberty Bells, 9 o'clock Eastern Time, 2 p.m. London time, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, and see you all next week.
Say bye, Mia.